Regret is not bad luck. It's the result of repeated choices. Regret is not a mystery. It's a pattern. No one is responsible for your regret. Except you. No one is coming to save you from regret. This audiobook teaches you how to break the pattern that brings regret. Chapter 1. Choose a life with purpose. Most people are not lazy. They are busy. Their days are full. Their calendars are packed. Their phones never stop buzzing. And yet, inside, they feel empty. That's the trap. Existing keeps you busy. Purpose gives your life direction. That's the difference. That's the line most people never cross. A full schedule is not a full life. Say it again. A full schedule is not a full life. You can wake up early, work all day, answer every message, meet every expectation, and still be going nowhere. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because none of it feels meaningful. That's the key. Most people are exhausted not from effort, but from misalignment. They are spending their energy on things that don't matter to them. They are living someone else's version of a good life. You have a choice. You always have a choice. But first, you need to see the truth clearly. Look around. You'll see people who did everything right. They went to school, got the degree, took the job, bought the house, built the routine. From the outside, it looks successful. From the inside, it feels hollow. They're not ungrateful. They're unfinished. No one told them that success without purpose feels like a cage. No one warned them that checking all the boxes doesn't guarantee peace. A full schedule is not a full life. You can exist for decades without ever choosing your life. And here's the hardest truth. No one is coming to choose it for you. You don't need their permission. Not your parents. Not societies. Not your friends. You don't need permission to live on purpose. But you do need honesty. Ask yourself this, slowly. Why do you do what you do? Not the polite answer. Not the rehearsed answer. The real one. Is it fear? Is it habit? Is it expectation? Or is it intention? Most people never stop to ask. They just keep moving. They mistake motion for meaning. That's the flaw. It's not about motivation. It's about direction. You don't need more energy. You need a clearer reason to use the energy you already have. That's the key. Purpose is not something mystical. It's not a lightning bolt. It's not something you find one day. Purpose is a decision. It's choosing what matters and letting the rest go. Purpose begins the moment you stop living by default. Right now, much of your life may be running on autopilot. You wake up because you have to. You work because you should. You rest when you're too tired to continue. That's existing. Purpose asks a different question. Why this work? Why this relationship? Why this pace? Why this life? And here's the standard that will guide this entire book. Memorize it. Does this move me toward peace at the end, or regret? That's the measure. Not comfort. Not approval. Not money alone. Peace or regret? You have a choice. Most people avoid that question because it's uncomfortable. It forces responsibility. If you admit your life lacks purpose, then change becomes your job. And change feels risky. So people stay busy instead. They fill the silence. They distract themselves. They say, one day. But one day is not a plan. One day is a delay. A full schedule is not a full life. Purpose doesn't mean everything will be easy. It means everything will be aligned. You may work just as hard, harder, even. But the weight feels different. Because now, effort has meaning. There's a difference between carrying a burden you chose and dragging a life you never questioned. That's the key. Let's get practical. If you want to stop existing and start choosing a life with purpose, you must do 3 things, starting now. First, audit your life. Look at how you spend your time, your energy, your attention. Where does it go? Not where you wish it went. Where it actually goes. Purpose begins with awareness. Second, identify what drains you versus what builds you. Some activities exhaust you and leave nothing behind. Others challenge you but make you feel alive. Pay attention to that difference. Your body already knows what matters. Third, start choosing intentionally, one decision at a time. You don't need to redesign your whole life overnight. That's fear talking. You need to make the next decision on purpose. One honest conversation. One boundary. One step toward what matters. You have a choice. Every single day. Here's what to stop doing. Stop saying, "I have no choice." That's a lie that keeps you small. You may not like the options, but you still choose. Stop confusing responsibility with surrender. You can be responsible and still live on purpose. Stop waiting for clarity before action. Clarity follows commitment, not the other way around. That's the key. Purpose doesn't remove fear. It gives fear a reason. When your life has direction, fear becomes a price, not a signal to stop. But when your life lacks purpose, even small fear feels overwhelming. Because there's nothing solid underneath you. This book is about building that foundation. So when life shakes you, and it will, you don't collapse. You stand. Remember this. You will reach the end of your life one day. That is certain. The question is not whether you'll be tired. You will be. The question is whether you'll be at peace. Peace doesn't come from staying busy. It comes from living intentionally. Peace comes from knowing you chose your life. Even when it was hard. Even when it cost you comfort. Especially then. A full schedule is not a full life. You don't need to have everything figured out. You need to stop lying to yourself. You need to stop existing. You need to choose. And once you choose purpose, something else becomes very clear. Comfort will try to pull you back. It will whisper that safety is better than meaning. That ease is better than truth. That's the next test. You've seen the difference between existing and purpose. Now you must face what keeps people stuck in existence. Chapter 2. Comfort, the enemy of a peaceful ending. Comfort feels harmless. That's why it's dangerous. Comfort doesn't attack you. It soothes you. It tells you everything is fine. It tells you there's no rush. And slowly, quietly, it steals your life. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. Say it again. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. That's the trade most people make without realizing it. They don't choose comfort once. They choose it every day. In small ways. In reasonable ways. And one day, they wake up late. Comfort delays purpose. That's the problem. Purpose demands movement. Comfort demands stillness. Purpose asks for courage. Comfort asks for excuses. Comfort says, "Stay where you are. It's not that bad." Purpose says, "You know this isn't it." That tension you feel inside? That quiet dissatisfaction? That sense that something is missing? That's purpose knocking. Comfort teaches you to ignore it. That's the key. Most people don't ruin their lives. They slowly soften them. They stay in the job that drains them because it pays well enough. They stay in the relationship that feels empty because it's familiar. They stay in the routine that numbs them because it's predictable. Nothing is wrong enough to leave. So they stay. Years pass. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. Look at real life. You've seen it. Someone says, "I'll leave when it gets worse." But worse never comes loudly. It arrives quietly, in regret. Someone says, "I'll start when I have more time." But time doesn't free itself. It fills itself. Someone says, "I'm grateful. I shouldn't complain." So they silence their truth. That's not gratitude. That's fear wearing good manners. You have a choice. Comfort numbs urgency. When you're comfortable, time feels unlimited. You assume there will be a better moment. A clearer sign. More certainty. But urgency is what moves life forward. Without urgency, purpose becomes a someday idea. And someday is where dreams go to die. That's the key. Here's the lie comfort tells you. You're safe. But safe is not fulfilled. Safe is not alive. Safe is not peaceful at the end. Peace at the end doesn't come from avoiding risk. It comes from facing it. Peace comes from knowing you didn't hide. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. Let's be honest. Comfort is not always soft couches and easy money. Sometimes comfort looks like responsibility, looks like loyalty, looks like being realistic. But ask the harder question. Is this responsibility or avoidance? Is this loyalty or fear of starting over? Is this realism or self-betrayal? You don't need their permission to ask that. You don't need their permission to choose differently. That's the key. Comfort trains you to tolerate a life you don't respect. At first, the discomfort is loud. You feel restless. You feel bored. You feel unfulfilled. But over time, comfort dulls that signal. You adapt. You normalize dissatisfaction. That's how people wake up at 40, 50, 60 and realize they've been surviving instead of living. Not because they were weak, but because they chose ease over courage. You have a choice. This is not about rejecting comfort completely. It's about not worshiping it. It's not about pain. It's about discipline. Say it clearly. It's not about suffering. It's about discipline. It's not about chaos. It's about courage. That's the key. Let's talk about courage. Courage is not a personality trait. It's a decision. Courage is choosing the harder truth over the easier lie. Courage is acting before you feel ready. Courage is risking discomfort now to avoid regret later. Every meaningful life requires this trade. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. Courage today builds peace later. You have a choice. Here's what to start doing. First, notice where comfort is costing you. Where are you staying because it's easy? Where are you quiet because speaking up feels risky? Where are you settling because leaving feels inconvenient? Write it down if you need to. Make it real. Awareness breaks comfort's spell. Second, introduce intentional discomfort. Not chaos. Not recklessness. Growth-level discomfort. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Start the project you keep delaying. Say no where you've been overcommitting. Small acts of courage compound. That's the key. Third, stop asking, is this comfortable? Start asking, is this aligned? Aligned with who you want to be. Aligned with the life you want to remember. Aligned with peace at the end. Comfort is a poor compass. Purpose is a better one. Let's talk about the end for a moment. Not to scare you. To clarify you. At the end, comfort won't matter. Ease won't matter. Approval won't matter. What will matter is this. Did you live honestly? Did you take the risks that mattered? Did you choose courage when it counted? No one regrets the discomfort of trying. They regret the comfort of hiding. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. Most people think peace comes from stability. It doesn't. Peace comes from integrity. From knowing your actions matched your values. From knowing you didn't abandon yourself. That kind of peace cannot be bought. It can only be earned. Through courage. Through choice. Through discipline. You have a choice. Here's what to stop doing. Stop waiting for comfort to disappear before you act. It won't. Stop telling yourself you'll change when things feel safer. They won't. Stop confusing fear with danger. Fear often shows up when you're close to something meaningful. That's the key. Comfort wants you quiet. Purpose wants you honest. Comfort wants you still. Purpose wants you moving. Comfort wants you numb. Purpose wants you alive. Every day, one of them wins. And every day, you decide which one. You have a choice. Choosing courage does not mean everything works out perfectly. That's not the promise. The promise is this. You won't have to apologize to yourself at the end. You won't have to wonder who you could have been. You won't have to regret the risks you never took. That's peace. Peace is not ease. Peace is completion. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. You've seen the enemy now. It's not failure. It's not lack of talent. It's not lack of opportunity. It's comfort. And comfort often hides behind something else. Something even more dangerous. The need to be liked. The need to be approved. The need to be validated. You've stepped away from comfort. Now you must face what keeps pulling you back into it. Approval. Chapter 3. You cannot live on purpose while seeking approval. Approval feels good. That's why it's dangerous. It feels like safety. It feels like belonging. It feels like you're doing something right. But approval has a cost. And most people pay it with their life. A borrowed life never brings peace. Say it again. A borrowed life never brings peace. That's the truth most people avoid. When you live for approval, your life is no longer yours. It belongs to whoever you're trying to please. You adjust your words. You soften your opinions. You delay your decisions. Not because it's right, but because you want to be accepted. That's the flaw. It's not about kindness, it's about fear. It's not about harmony, it's about avoidance. That's the key. Purpose demands focus. Approval fragments it. You cannot serve everyone and still serve your life. Every time you say yes to be liked, you say no to something that matters to you. Every time you stay quiet to keep the peace, you betray your own truth. And betrayal, repeated over time, becomes regret. You have a choice. Let's talk about how this looks in real life. You've seen people who shape their entire identity around validation. They choose careers their parents respect, not ones they care about. They stay in relationships because leaving would disappoint others. They hide their real goals because they don't want to seem unrealistic. From the outside, they look successful. From the inside, they feel lost. Because they don't know who they are without approval. A borrowed life never brings peace. Here's the trap. Approval trains you to ask the wrong question. Instead of asking, "Is this aligned with who I want to be?" you ask, "What will they think?" That question slowly erases you. Bit by bit. Decision by decision. Until one day, you realize you've been living a version of life that made sense to everyone, except you. That's the key. Approval is subtle. It doesn't always look like people-pleasing. Sometimes it looks like being reasonable. Being low maintenance. Being easy to work with. But ask yourself this. Are you being reasonable, or are you shrinking? Are you being flexible, or are you avoiding conflict? Are you being agreeable, or are you afraid to stand alone? You don't need their permission to ask that. You don't need their permission to answer honestly. Most people are not afraid of failure. They're afraid of judgment. They're afraid of being misunderstood. Afraid of being criticized. Afraid of being seen as selfish. So they edit themselves. They live carefully. They trade truth for approval. A borrowed life never brings peace. Let's be clear. This is not about becoming rude. This is not about rejecting everyone. This is not about arrogance. It's about ownership. Say it plainly. It's not about rebellion, it's about responsibility. It's not about ego, it's about discipline. That's the key. Purpose requires you to take responsibility for your life. Approval lets you avoid that responsibility. Because as long as you're doing what others expect, you can tell yourself it wasn't really your choice. But at the end, that excuse won't matter. Only ownership will. You have a choice. Here's what living for approval does over time. It disconnects you from your instincts. You stop trusting your inner voice. You wait for feedback before acting. You don't move unless you're encouraged. You don't decide unless you're supported. That's not living. That's outsourcing your life. And outsourced lives end in regret. A borrowed life never brings peace. Let's talk about permission. Many people are waiting for it. Permission to change. Permission to leave. Permission to start over. But permission never comes. Because no one else can authorize your life. You don't need their permission. Not to want more. Not to choose differently. Not to live on purpose. That's the key. Here's a hard truth. If you live by approval, you will always be behind. Because approval comes after action, never before. The people you admire didn't wait to be validated. They acted first. They were misunderstood first. They were criticized first. Approval followed later, if it came at all. And some of the most fulfilled people never got it. But they got peace. Let's get practical. If you want to stop living for approval and start living on purpose, you must retrain yourself. First, notice where approval controls you. Where do you hesitate because you don't want to upset someone? Where do you delay because you're afraid of how it will look? Where do you explain yourself too much? Those are clues. Awareness is the first act of ownership. Second, practice small acts of self-trust. Make a decision without asking everyone. Say no without over-explaining. State your opinion without apologizing for it. You don't need their permission. That's the key. Third, accept discomfort as the price of integrity. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will agree. Not everyone will stay. That's not failure. That's alignment. Here's what to stop doing. Stop asking for validation before acting. Stop shrinking your goals to be accepted. Stop living as a guest in your own life. Approval is not evil, but it is a terrible leader. Purpose must lead. You have a choice. Let's return to the end for a moment. At the end of your life, the people you tried to please won't be there with answers. They won't explain your choices. They won't carry your regret. You will stand alone with your life. And the question will not be, did they approve? The question will be, were you honest? A borrowed life never brings peace. Most people think standing alone is scary. It is. But standing at the end full of regret is worse. Courage now buys peace later. Approval now buys comfort, but steals completion. Comfort today steals peace tomorrow. That's the pattern. Living on purpose requires you to disappoint people sometimes, including people you love. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough to live truthfully. You cannot live a meaningful life and be universally approved. That's the key. You've let go of comfort. You've loosened the grip of approval. Now something else will rise. Fear. Fear doesn't disappear when you choose purpose. It gets louder. But fear is not a warning. It's a signal. You've stopped borrowing your life. Now you must face what stands at the edge of it. Fear. Chapter 4. Fear appears when purpose is near. Fear shows up at the wrong time. Right when you're about to move. Right when you're about to choose. Right when something finally matters. That's not an accident. Fear is not a stop sign. It's confirmation. Fear guards what matters. Say it again. Fear guards what matters. That's the key most people miss. Most people think fear means danger. They think fear means something is wrong. They think fear means, don't do this. So they stop. They turn around. They stay where they are. And they call it being smart. But look closer. Fear doesn't show up when you're wasting time. It doesn't show up when you're scrolling. It doesn't show up when you're numbing yourself. Fear shows up when you're close to truth. Fear guards what matters. If fear were a warning, it would show up everywhere. But it doesn't. It shows up at the edge of change. At the edge of honesty. At the edge of purpose. That's the pattern. You have a choice. Let's be clear. This is not about ignoring real danger. This is not about being reckless. This is not about blind risk. It's about interpretation. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. The discipline to understand what fear is really saying. That's the key. Fear speaks loudest when you're about to leave the familiar. The familiar may be painful, but it's predictable. The unfamiliar may be better, but it's uncertain. Fear prefers certainty over fulfillment. So it whispers lies. You're not ready. You'll fail. People will judge you. Stay where you are. Fear guards what matters. Look at real life. You've seen people who felt called to something more. A different career. A different path. A different version of themselves. They felt excited. Then they felt afraid. And most of them stopped there. Not because the path was wrong, but because it was real. Purpose feels dangerous because it requires you to show up fully. That's the key. Now look at the other side. Look at the people who moved forward anyway. They were afraid too. They doubted themselves too. They didn't feel ready either. But they acted. And over time, something happened. Their fear didn't disappear. But it changed. It turned into focus. It turned into clarity. It turned into alignment. Because they stopped running from it. Fear guards what matters. Fear tests commitment. It asks one question. Do you want this enough to be uncomfortable? Most people answer no. Not out loud, but with their actions. You have a choice. Here's another truth. Fear is not personal. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. Fear is biological. It exists to keep things the same. Purpose exists to move things forward. That's the conflict. And every meaningful life must face it. That's the key. Let's talk about how fear lies. Fear exaggerates consequences. Fear minimizes opportunity. It tells you the worst-case scenario in detail and ignores the cost of staying the same. But staying the same has a cost too. A quiet one. A long-term one. Regret. Fear guards what matters. Here's what fear never tells you. It never tells you what happens if you don't act. It never tells you how small your life becomes when you keep choosing safety. It never tells you how heavy unchosen potential feels. That's why you must think beyond the moment. You must think about the end. Does this move me toward peace or regret? That's the standard. Purpose feels dangerous because it asks for ownership. No more excuses. No more hiding. No more blaming circumstances. If you step forward, the outcome belongs to you. Fear doesn't like that. Comfort doesn't like that. Approval doesn't like that. But your future self needs it. You have a choice. Let's get practical. If you want to stop running from fear and start using it, you must change how you respond. First, stop asking, "How do I get rid of fear?" That's the wrong question. Fear doesn't need to disappear for you to move. Ask this instead. What is this fear protecting? Often, it's protecting something meaningful. A truth you haven't spoken. A step you haven't taken. A life you haven't chosen. Fear guards what matters. Second, separate fear from facts. Fear speaks in absolutes. Facts speak in specifics. Fear says, everything will fall apart. Facts ask, what's the actual risk? Write it down if you need to. Fear loses power when examined. That's the key. Third, act in spite of fear, not without it. Waiting to feel fearless is waiting forever. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to move with fear present. Say it clearly. It's not about confidence, it's about discipline. Discipline to act even when your emotions resist. Here's what to stop doing. Stop treating fear as a command. Stop obeying it automatically. Stop assuming it knows best. Fear has one job, to protect the present. You have a bigger job, to build the future. You have a choice. Most people misunderstand bravery. They think brave people are fearless. They're not. They're committed. Committed to something bigger than comfort. Bigger than approval. Bigger than the need to feel safe all the time. Purpose creates that commitment. That's the key. Fear will show up again and again. At every new level. At every meaningful step. That doesn't mean you're off track. It means you're still moving toward what matters. Fear guards what matters. Let's talk about alignment. When you follow fear, meaning you move toward what scares you for the right reasons, something shifts. Your energy changes. Your decisions simplify. Your life feels more honest. Not easier, but clearer. Alignment feels steady, even when it's hard. That's peace in progress. But when you avoid fear, life shrinks. Your world gets smaller. Your options narrow. Your voice softens. You become careful instead of alive. And careful lives don't end in peace. They end in questions. What if? Who could I have been? Why didn't I try? Fear guards what matters. You don't need their permission to be afraid. You don't need their permission to move anyway. Fear is not a flaw. Avoidance is. Say it clearly. It's not about fear, it's about discipline. That's the key. Every day, fear will offer you a deal. Stay comfortable, and I'll leave you alone. But that deal always expires at the end. And the bill comes due. You pay it in regret. Or you pay it now in courage. You have a choice. You've stopped living for comfort. You've stopped borrowing your life for approval. You've learned to recognize fear for what it is. Now you must understand the true cost of ignoring purpose. Because fear is loud, but regret is louder. And regret doesn't ask permission. You've faced fear. Now you must face the price of avoidance. Regret. Chapter 5. Regret is the price of avoiding your calling. Regret does not arrive loudly. It doesn't crash into your life. It doesn't warn you. It waits. It whispers at first. Soft. Easy to ignore. And then one day it roars. What you avoid now, you carry later. Say it again. What you avoid now, you carry later. That's the truth most people learn too late. Regret is patient. It lets you believe you have time. It lets you believe you'll deal with it later. It lets you believe you're being practical. That's why it's dangerous. Because by the time regret speaks clearly, the cost is already paid. You have a choice. Most people think regret comes from failure. It doesn't. Regret comes from avoidance. From the things you didn't try. The words you didn't say. The path you felt called to, but never chose. Failure hurts for a moment. Avoidance hurts forever. That's the key. Look at real life. Talk to people near the end. Not the highlight reel stories. The honest ones. They rarely talk about mistakes. They talk about chances they didn't take. I wish I had tried. I wish I had said it. I wish I hadn't waited so long. They don't regret the risks. They regret the silence. What you avoid now, you carry later. Here's how regret works. At first, it's subtle. A feeling that something is unfinished. A quiet restlessness. A sense that you're not fully yourself. You tell yourself it's normal. You tell yourself it will pass. But it doesn't. It grows. Because avoidance compounds. That's the key. Regret is not emotional weakness. It's unresolved truth. Every time you ignore your calling, something inside you stays open. Every time you choose safety over purpose, you leave something undone. And unfinished things don't disappear. They wait. You have a choice. Let's talk about calling. Calling doesn't mean one perfect career. It doesn't mean fame. It doesn't mean knowing everything in advance. Calling is the direction you know you should move in, but resist. It's the honest work. The meaningful contribution. The life that feels true to you. Calling is not loud. It's consistent. And avoiding it has consequences. Most people think, I'll do it later. Later when they're ready. Later when it's safer. Later when they have more time. But later is not guaranteed. And even when later comes, courage may not. That's the key. Here's another hard truth. Regret is heavier than fear. Fear is uncomfortable. Regret is suffocating. Fear lives in the moment. Regret lives forever. Fear asks, what if this goes wrong? Regret asks, why didn't I try? One question passes. The other stays. What you avoid now, you carry later. Let's be honest. Avoidance feels smart in the short term. It avoids conflict. It avoids risk. It avoids discomfort. But avoidance doesn't eliminate pain. It postpones it and multiplies it. That's the trade. Short-term comfort for long-term unrest. You have a choice. Regret doesn't care about your reasons. It doesn't care that you were busy, or tired, or afraid, or trying to be responsible. At the end, explanations don't bring peace. Only honesty does. That's the key. This chapter is not here to scare you. It's here to clarify you. Because once you see regret clearly, you stop negotiating with avoidance. You stop pretending you don't know. You know. You always knew. Let's talk about failure again. Failure is visible. Regret is invisible. Failure teaches you something. Regret teaches you nothing, only pain. People recover from failure all the time. They rarely recover from decades of avoidance. Because avoidance shapes identity. You become the person who didn't try. And that identity is hard to escape. Here's what regret sounds like at the end. I was going to. I almost did. I thought I had more time. Those sentences don't bring peace. They bring weight. What you avoid now, you carry later. Purpose does not guarantee success. It guarantees integrity. And integrity is what creates peace at the end. Peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from alignment. from knowing you didn't abandon yourself. That's the key. Let's get practical. If you want to reduce regret, you must confront avoidance directly. First, name what you're avoiding. Not everything. Just the one thing you keep postponing. The conversation. The decision. The step forward. If it keeps returning to your mind, it matters. That's a signal. Second, ask why you're avoiding it. Is it fear of failure? Fear of judgment? Fear of change? Be honest. Avoidance thrives in vagueness. Clarity weakens it. You have a choice. Third, take imperfect action. Not dramatic action. Not reckless action. Imperfect action. Send the message. Make the call. Start before you're ready. Regret grows when action is delayed, not when action is imperfect. That's the key. Here's what to stop doing. Stop telling yourself you'll feel more confident later. Stop waiting for certainty. Stop confusing readiness with avoidance. Readiness is built through action. Avoidance destroys it. Say it clearly. It's not about perfection, it's about discipline. Regret is not about what you lacked. It's about what you ignored. Ignored truth. Ignored desire. Ignored responsibility to your own life. No one else can live your calling for you. No one else can answer for your avoidance. You don't need their permission to choose differently. Let's talk about the end again. At the end, life becomes very simple. There are no distractions. No excuses. No noise. Just you and the truth. And the truth asks one question. Did you live honestly? Regret answers when the answer is no. What you avoid now, you carry later. You can't erase the past. But you can stop adding to it. You can stop creating future regret today. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Today. You have a choice. Every avoided calling leaves a residue. A heaviness. A quiet dissatisfaction. But every honest step forward lightens that weight. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. That's the key. Regret is not inevitable. It's optional. But only if you act while you still can. Avoidance feels small now. But it grows. Calling feels scary now. But it resolves. One leads to unrest. The other leads to peace. You've seen how regret is created. You've felt its early whispers. Now it's time to understand what actually builds peace, day by day. Not intention. Not desire. Action. Consistent action. You've faced fear. You've faced regret. Now you must face the lie that keeps people stuck planning forever. Preparation. Chapter 6. Purpose is proven by action, not intention. Intention feels productive. It feels smart. It feels safe. But intention is not action. And thinking about purpose is not living it. Purpose is practiced, not planned. Say it again. Purpose is practiced, not planned. That's the line that separates people who change from people who wait. Most people don't lack good intentions. They have plenty. They intend to start. They intend to change. They intend to live differently. And then they stop there. They read. They watch. They think. They call it preparation. But preparation without action is procrastination with better branding. That's the key. Waiting to feel ready is a trap. Readiness is not a feeling you get before action. Readiness is a skill you build through action. People say, "I'll move when I feel confident." Confidence never comes first. Action comes first. Confidence follows. Purpose is practiced, not planned. Look at real life. You've seen people who talked for years about what they wanted to do. Start the business. Change careers. Write the book. Fix the relationship. They gathered information. They waited for the right time. They waited to feel sure. Years passed. Nothing changed. Not because they were incapable, but because they mistook intention for progress. You have a choice. Intentions don't create peace. Actions do. At the end of your life, you won't be comforted by what you meant to do. You'll be comforted by what you did. Potential does not calm regret. Movement does. That's the key. Purpose requires proof. Not proof to others. Proof to yourself. Every small action says, I'm serious. Every delay says, I'm avoiding. And your nervous system listens. Over time, it learns who's in charge. You or your excuses. You have a choice. Here's the lie that keeps people stuck. I'm not ready yet. Not ready for what? For discomfort? For learning as you go? For being imperfect? No one is ready at the beginning. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a result. Purpose is practiced, not planned. Let's be clear. Planning is useful. Thinking is necessary. But they are not substitutes for action. Action is the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. Without that bridge, intention collapses. That's the key. Here's another trut. The longer you delay action, the heavier it feels. Not because the action gets harder, but because doubt grows. Every delay feeds the voice that says, see, you're not really serious. Action silences that voice. Even small action. Especially small action. Peace does not come from imagining a better life. It comes from building one. Brick by brick. Step by step. Peace comes from knowing you showed up. Even when it was messy. Even when it was slow. Purpose is practiced, not planned. Let's talk about discipline. Because this is not about talent. It's not about passion. It's not about inspiration. Say it clearly. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. Discipline to act when you don't feel like it. Discipline to keep going when the novelty fades. Discipline to choose progress over perfection. That's the key. Many people imagine purpose as a big moment. A single decision that changes everything. That's a fantasy. Purpose is built through ordinary actions done consistently. Writing one page. Making one call. Having one honest conversation. Taking one uncomfortable step. Those actions don't look heroic, but they build a heroic life. You have a choice. Here's what action does that thinking never will. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Thinking creates theories. Action creates truth. Purpose is practiced, not planned. Let's get practical. If you want to move from intention to action, you must change how you measure progress. Stop measuring by how much you've learned. Stop measuring by how motivated you feel. Measure by what you did today. One action that moved you forward. One action that honored your values. That's the metric. That's the key. Here's a simple rule. If you've been thinking about something for more than a week, and you still haven't acted, you're avoiding. Not because you're lazy, but because you're afraid. And fear feeds on delay. Action starves it. You have a choice. Let's talk about imperfection. Action will be imperfect. It will be clumsy. It will feel awkward. That's normal. Perfection is not the goal. Momentum is. Say it clearly. It's not about perfection, it's about discipline. Discipline to show up anyway. Here's what to stop doing. Stop over-preparing. Stop waiting for the perfect plan. Stop telling yourself you'll act once you know more. You already know enough to take the next step. That's the key. Here's what to start doing. Start before you feel ready. Start small. Start today. One email. One application. One workout. One honest sentence. Action builds identity. Over time, you stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start saying, "This is who I am." Purpose is practiced, not planned. Action also builds trust with yourself. Every time you act, you send a message inward. I keep my word. I follow through. I can rely on myself. That trust is priceless. Without it, doubt runs your life. With it, fear loses power. That's the key. Let's return to the end again. At the end, no one asks how much you thought about living well. They ask how you lived. You won't regret acting imperfectly. You'll regret standing still. Peace comes from action taken, not potential imagined. Purpose is practiced, not planned. You don't need their permission to begin. You don't need certainty. You don't need confidence. You need commitment. Commitment to move, especially when it's uncomfortable. You have a choice. Action will not remove all doubt, but it will give doubt less control. Action will not guarantee success, but it will guarantee growth. And growth is what makes a life feel alive. Every day you don't act, you reinforce avoidance. Every day you do act, you reinforce purpose. This is not dramatic. It's daily. Small actions compound into big outcomes. That's the key. You've learned to choose purpose over comfort. You've stopped borrowing your life for approval. You've faced fear. You've seen the cost of regret. Now you understand the engine that moves everything forward. Action. But action alone is not enough. Because how you act, day after day, creates your ending. Every day is a vote. For peace. Or for regret. You're acting now. Next, you must understand how your daily choices shape your final moment. Chapter 7. Every day is a vote for peace or regret. Your life is not decided at the end. It is decided daily. Quietly. Repeatedly. Without ceremony. You rehearse the ending every day. Say it again. You rehearse the ending every day. That's the truth most people never see. People think the final moment is dramatic. It's not. It's familiar. It feels like the life you practiced. That's the key. Every day you vote. Not with words. With actions. What you avoid. What you face. What you choose when no one is watching. Those choices don't disappear. They stack. You have a choice. Most people imagine regret as a sudden realization. It's not. Regret is built slowly. By small delays. Small compromises. Small excuses. I'll do it tomorrow. It's not a big deal. I'm too tired today. Those sentences don't feel dangerous. But repeated, they shape your ending. You rehearse the ending every day. Peace works the same way. It's not created by one perfect decision. It's created by many honest ones. Speaking when it's uncomfortable. Acting when it's inconvenient. Stopping when something feels wrong. Those moments feel small, but they are not. That's the key. Look at real-life patterns. People don't wake up one day full of regret. They wake up tired of avoiding themselves. They didn't ruin their lives. They postponed them. Day by day. Choice by choice. You have a choice. Daily avoidance feels harmless. Skipping the hard conversation. Ignoring the idea that keeps returning. Choosing distraction over direction. But avoidance compounds. What you avoid today becomes harder tomorrow. What you avoid for years becomes unbearable. You rehearse the ending every day. Daily courage works the same way. It builds strength. It builds trust with yourself. It builds momentum. Courage doesn't feel heroic. It feels ordinary. That's why it works. That's the key. Let's talk about discipline again. Because this chapter is not about intensity. It's about consistency. Say it clearly. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. Discipline to choose what matters, again and again. Your nervous system is always learning. It learns whether you follow through. It learns whether you keep your word to yourself. It learns whether you act or retreat. Over time, it expects the pattern. And patterns become identity. You have a choice. Here's a simple truth. You don't rise to the occasion at the end. You fall to your habits. If you practiced honesty, the end feels honest. If you practiced avoidance, the end feels heavy. You rehearse the ending every day. Let's get practical. If every day is a vote, then your job is simple. Cast better votes. Not perfect ones. Better ones. One at a time. That's the key. Start by noticing your defaults. What do you usually do when something feels uncomfortable? Do you distract? Do you delay? Do you rationalize? Those defaults are shaping your future. Awareness gives you leverage. You have a choice. Next, interrupt the pattern. Do the opposite once a day. Speak instead of staying silent. Act instead of waiting. Rest intentionally instead of numbing out. Small interruptions change direction. Here's what to stop doing. Stop thinking today doesn't matter. Stop treating small choices as insignificant. There is no neutral day. Every day moves you closer to something. Peace. Or regret. You rehearse the ending every day. Most people think they'll fix things later. But later is shaped by now. Later is just now repeated many times. That's the key. Your future self is watching. Not judging. Waiting. Waiting to see if you will show up today. Waiting to see if you will choose truth over comfort. You don't need their permission to choose differently. You only need awareness. Daily life feels ordinary. That's why it's powerful. No spotlight. No applause. Just choices. And those choices write the final scene. You have a choice. Here's another hard truth. You can't escape the ending. But you can prepare for it. Not by planning. By practicing. Practicing honesty. Practicing courage. Practicing discipline. You rehearse the ending every day. Let's talk about peace again. Peace is not relief. It's alignment. It's knowing your days matched your values. It's knowing you didn't live in contradiction. That peace is earned slowly. That's the key. And regret? Regret is the memory of repeated avoidance. Not one big mistake. 1,000 small ones. None of them dramatic. All of them avoidable. You have a choice. Every time you act, you cast a vote. Every time you avoid, you cast one too. The system doesn't care what you say you want. It counts what you do. You don't need to change everything today. You need to change one thing today. One honest act. One intentional choice. That's how endings change. Your life is not a mystery. It's a pattern. And patterns can be changed. But only now. Only today. You rehearse the ending every day. You've seen how daily choices shape your future. Now you must face the final responsibility. Not just choosing well, but finishing well. Because a life can be busy. A life can be successful. And still feel unfinished. You're close to the end now. Not of life. Of avoidance. Now we talk about completion. Chapter 8. Finish your life before life finishes you. Most people reach the end still holding things. Unsaid words. Unlived dreams. Unfinished lives. That's why the end feels heavy for them. A finished life feels different. It feels calm. Completion is peace. Say it again. Completion is peace. That's the destination of everything you've heard so far. People are not afraid of dying. They are afraid of dying incomplete. They are afraid of the moment when there is no more time to fix it. No more chances. No more someday. That fear doesn't come from death. It comes from unfinished business. You have a choice. Finishing your life does not mean doing everything. It means doing what matters. It means not leaving your truth trapped inside you. It means not postponing the life you know you're meant to live. Completion is peace. You've seen it before. People who faced death calmly. Not because they were fearless, but because they were complete. They said what needed to be said. They lived how they wanted to live. They did not hide. They were tired, but not regretful. That's the key. Contrast that with the other ending. People filled with anxiety. Clinging. Bargaining. Not because they loved life too much, but because they didn't live it fully. They ran out of time with things still undone. Completion is peace. This book has not been about death. It's been about finishing. Finishing conversations. Finishing chapters of your life. Finishing the version of yourself that hides. Life finishes everyone. But not everyone finishes their life. You have a choice. Most people think they will finish later. Later when they slow down. Later when things settle. Later when it's more convenient. But life doesn't wait. And completion doesn't come from intention. It comes from action. That's the key. Finishing your life means living without loose ends. Not perfection. Not control. Integrity. Integrity between what you feel and what you do. Between what you value and how you live. That integrity creates calm. Completion is peace. Let's talk about unfinished weight. Unfinished lives feel rushed even when nothing is happening. They feel anxious even when things are fine. Because something inside knows. Knows you're not done. Knows you're holding back. Knows you're delaying what matters. That weight doesn't disappear on its own. It must be released. You have a choice. A finished life is not loud. It's grounded. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need approval. Because it was lived honestly. That's the key. Finishing your life does not mean quitting everything. It means closing what no longer fits. Ending what drains you. Speaking what you've been avoiding. Choosing alignment over appearance. Completion is peace. Here's a hard truth. Many people think peace comes at the end. It doesn't. Peace is built before the end. It's built every time you choose truth over comfort. Every time you choose courage over avoidance. Every time you finish something instead of escaping it. You rehearse the ending every day. Let's get practical. If you want a finished life, you must live with finality. Not fatalism. Finality. Meaning, act as if today matters, because it does. Ask yourself often, if this were the last chapter, would I be at peace with how I live today? That question sharpens everything. That's the key. Here's what finishing looks like in daily life. It looks like honest conversations instead of silence. It looks like aligned work instead of endless distraction. It looks like boundaries instead of resentment. Small finishes create big peace. Here's what to stop doing. Stop keeping things open that need to be closed. Stop postponing decisions you already know the answer to. Stop living as if time is unlimited. Time is generous, but not infinite. You have a choice. Completion does not require rushing. It requires clarity, knowing what matters, and acting accordingly. A finished life is not packed with activity. It is clear of regret. Completion is peace. People who finish their life before the end don't cling. They don't panic. They don't bargain. They rest. Because they lived. They didn't borrow their life. They didn't hide from fear. They didn't avoid their calling. They finished what mattered. That's the key. Let's return to purpose one last time. Purpose is not a phase. It's a practice. And when practiced daily, it leads somewhere specific. Peace. Not relief. Not comfort. Peace. Completion is peace. You don't need their permission to finish your life. Not society's. Not your past's. Not your fears. You only need honesty. Honesty about what you're avoiding. Honesty about what matters. Honesty about what must change. You have a choice. A finished life is not free of pain. It is free of denial. Pain passes. Denial stays. Completion clears denial. That's the key. You may not control how long you live, but you control how completely you live. That control is your responsibility. No one else can finish your life for you. If you want peace at the end, you must stop living halfway now. Half-truths create half-lives. Half-choices create half-peace. Completion requires full ownership. Completion is not dramatic. It is quiet. It shows up as calm, as steadiness, as acceptance. Not because nothing went wrong, but because nothing important was left undone. You don't finish your life in one moment. You finish it gradually. By choosing purpose over comfort. By choosing courage over approval. By choosing action over intention. By choosing daily honesty over long-term regret. You've learned how peace is built. You've seen what steals it. Now everything comes down to one thing. Living in a way that leaves nothing trapped inside you. Because when nothing is trapped, nothing haunts you. Completion is peace. You are still alive. That means you still have time to finish. And finishing is not about the end. It's about how you live now. You have a choice.